Once upon a time, in a bustling town called Onitsha, there lived a woman whose beauty could stop the marketplace. Her name was Adaeze, and when she walked through the streets, men paused their conversations and women adjusted their wrappers in quiet envy. Adaeze was not just beautiful. She was wealthy too. Her husband, Chukwudi, was a successful palm oil merchant whose business stretched across 3 villages. Their compound was the finest on their street, with freshly painted walls and a gate that gleamed under the sun. Adaeze wore the finest George wrappers, coral beads that clicked softly when she moved, and gold earrings that caught the light like tiny flames. Other women whispered about her at the market. They smiled at her face but spoke differently behind her back. Some admired her. Others envied her. But everyone respected her, at least on the surface. She attended every village meeting, contributed money to community projects, and greeted the elders with proper respect. Yet beneath all that beauty and wealth, something else was growing. The old woman who sat under the breadfruit tree would watch her pass and shake their heads slowly. One elder, Adaeze, once said to her friend, that one walks like she owns the world. But beauty without discipline is like a fire without a fence. It will burn everything. Her friend nodded. The ancestors are watching. They always do. If you're watching this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my folktale story from. I want to know how far it has traveled. In Onitsha, tradition was not just spoken. It was lived. The elders taught it to the young ones under the moonlight. The priests reminded people of it during festivals. And the women, especially the married women, knew the laws that governed their homes and their bodies. One law stood above many others, clear and unshakable. A married woman must honor her husband's bed. She must not lie with another man, no matter how sweet his words or how heavy his pockets. This was not just a rule made by men. It was a spiritual law, one that the ancestors had sealed with blood and sacrifice long before any of them were born. The elders said that when a woman married, her spirit became tied to her husband's lineage. His ancestors watched over her. His gods protected her. But if she broke that bond, if she gave herself to another man while wearing her husband's name, the consequences would not come from humans alone. The land itself would respond. Sickness would visit. Madness would knock. Death would wait patiently at the door. The warning was always the same, whispered from mother to daughter, from elder to younger wife. Those who break it never escape whole. Some women laughed quietly at these warnings, calling them old stories meant to scare them into obedience. But others, the wiser ones, knew better. They had seen what happened to women who tested the law. And they kept themselves far from such foolishness. Chukwudi was the kind of man other men envied and women secretly wished for. He woke before the cock crowed, checked his palm oil drums, and made sure his workers were treated fairly. He did not drink palm wine until he staggered. He did not chase other women or spend his money recklessly. Every evening, he returned home to Adaeze with a smile, asking about her day, bringing her small gifts from the market, roasted groundnuts, ripe oranges, sometimes a new headscarf. When she fell sick, he stayed by her side, boiling herbs himself and feeding her with his own hands. When her mother died, he paid for the entire burial ceremony without complaint. He respected her. He honored her. He trusted her completely. Adaeze had everything a woman could want. A loyal husband, a comfortable life, and respect in the community. But something inside her was never satisfied. She looked at Chukwudi and saw stability, yes, but not excitement. She saw a good man, but not one who made her heart race. When other men looked at her with hunger in their eyes, something in her responded. The thrill of being wanted by someone new, someone forbidden, began to pull at her like a current she could not resist. At first, she pushed the thoughts away. She reminded herself of her vows, her husband's kindness, and the warnings from the elders. But slowly, the whispers in her mind grew louder. And one day, she stopped resisting. It started small, the way most betrayals do. A lingering conversation with a man at the market. A smile that lasted too long. A compliment that made her cheeks warm. His name was Obinna, a trader who sold fabrics near the main road. He was smooth-tongued and handsome, the kind of man who knew how to make a woman feel special. One afternoon, when Chukwudi was away on business, Obinna appeared at her gate with a bundle of expensive lace fabric. "For the most beautiful woman in Onitsha," he said with a grin. Adaeze hesitated, but only for a moment. She let him inside. They talked. They laughed. And when he leaned closer, she did not pull away. That first affair felt like a secret victory, something she controlled, something that belonged only to her. When Chukwudi returned home that evening, she cooked his favorite soup and smiled at him as if nothing had changed. And in her mind, nothing had. She felt no guilt, no fear, no immediate consequence. Days passed. Then weeks. Obinna visited again. Then again. And each time, Adaeze grew bolder. She told herself it was harmless. She told herself she deserved to feel desired. She told herself that as long as her husband did not know, no harm was done. But the ancestors do not measure harm by what is seen. They measure it by what is broken. And something sacred had already been shattered. Adaeze was not alone in her disobedience. She had friends, 3 other married women who shared her lifestyle. Their names were Ifeoma, Nkiru, and Obiageli. They were all married to hard-working men, living comfortable lives, yet they too had decided that marriage was not enough. They met regularly at Ifeoma's house when their husbands were away. They drank palm wine, laughed loudly, and shared stories of their secret lovers with shameless pride. "My husband thinks I went to visit my sister," Nkiru would say, giggling. "But I was with Emeka in his shop all afternoon." Obiageli would add, "These men are so foolish. They work hard, bring money home, and we smile at them. They never suspect a thing." Ifeoma, the boldest of them all, would lean back and say, "The elders talk about curses and consequences. I have been doing this for 3 years. Where is my punishment?" They all laughed together, mocking the warnings they had heard since childhood. To them, tradition was old, outdated, meant for women with no courage. They believed they were smarter than the rules. They believed they were untouchable. And for a while, it seemed they were right. No lightning struck them. No sickness came immediately. Their husbands remained kind and unsuspecting. But deep beneath the surface, something was already shifting. The spiritual realm does not rush. It waits. It records. And when the time comes, it moves with terrifying precision. Chukwudi began to change. It started with small things that Adaeze barely noticed at first. He would complain of headaches in the morning, rubbing his temples slowly before heading to work. Then came the tiredness, a heaviness in his body that made him sit down more often than usual. "Are you feeling well?" Adaeze asked one evening, more out of routine than genuine concern. "I don't know," Chukwudi replied, his voice weaker than before. "I just feel drained." Weeks passed, and the symptoms grew worse. His appetite disappeared. His skin lost its glow. His eyes, once bright and alert, became dull and distant. He visited the local clinic, and the doctor ran tests, checked his blood pressure, listened to his heartbeat. But every result came back normal. "There is nothing wrong with you medically," the doctor said, confused. "Perhaps you need rest." But rest did not help. Chukwudi's body continued to weaken, as if something invisible was feeding on his strength. He stopped going to the market as frequently. His workers began handling most of the business. Yet strangely, even as his health declined, his palm oil business continued to prosper. Money flowed in steadily. New contracts arrived. His name remained respected. It was as if the land was blessing his labor while something else was draining his life. The elders who knew such things would have recognized the signs immediately. But Chukwudi, trusting and unsuspecting, never thought to look beyond the physical realm for answers. Chukwudi's wealth grew while his body wasted away. His storage rooms overflowed with palm oil. His bank account swelled. Customers praised his products and paid him well. But every morning, he struggled to rise from his bed. His legs felt like they carried stones. His chest ached with a pain that had no name. Adaeze watched all of this, and somewhere deep inside, a tiny voice whispered warnings she refused to hear. She pushed the thoughts away, telling herself his sickness had nothing to do with her. After all, he had been sick before she started her affairs. At least, that's what she told herself. One evening, an elder named Papa Okafor visited their home. He had known Chukwudi's father and watched Chukwudi grow from a boy into a man. When he saw how thin Chukwudi had become, his face darkened with concern. "My son," Papa Okafor said carefully, "have you offended anyone? Has something happened in your house that you are not telling me?" Chukwudi shook his head weakly. "Nothing, Papa. I have done nothing wrong." Papa Okafor looked at Adaeze, his gaze sharp and knowing. Then he turned back to Chukwudi. "Wealth cannot block curses, my son. Money cannot fight spiritual battles. If the foundation of a house is broken, the roof will not save it." The old man stood to leave, but before stepping out, he said one final thing. "Sometimes the enemy is not outside. Sometimes it sleeps in your bed." Chukwudi did not understand. But Adaeze felt her heart skip. The day Chukwudi discovered the truth came without warning. He returned home earlier than expected from a business trip, his body too weak to continue. When he pushed open the door to his bedroom, he saw his wife with another man. The room went silent. The man fled through the back door. Adaeze stood frozen, her wrapper clutched to her chest, her eyes wide with terror. Chukwudi did not shout. He did not curse. He simply stared at her, his face filled with a pain deeper than any physical sickness. "Why?" he whispered. Adaeze fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry. Please forgive me. It was a mistake. It will never happen again." For 3 days, Chukwudi said nothing to her. He stayed in a different room, barely eating, barely speaking. On the 4th day, he called her to sit with him. "I forgive you," he said quietly. "But you must never do this again. Do you hear me?" Adaeze nodded desperately, clutching his hands. "I swear. I swear on my life." For a few weeks, she kept her promise. But then the pull returned. The thrill. The secrecy. The attention from men who were not her husband. She convinced herself that Chukwudi's forgiveness meant she had been given a clean slate. She believed mercy erased consequence. She was wrong. Within a month, Chukwudi's sickness returned, this time with a vengeance. He could barely walk. His breathing became labored. And this time, no amount of medicine could touch it. What Chukwudi did not know was that Adaeze's betrayal had not been a one-time mistake. Over the years, there had been many men. Too many to count. Some were traders. Some were travelers passing through. Some were even men from their own community who smiled at Chukwudi in the marketplace while sleeping with his wife in secret. Adaeze had become skilled at hiding. She knew when to leave the house, where to go, and how to return without suspicion. She kept different wrappers for different meetings, washing them carefully before Chukwudi could notice. Her friends, Ifeoma, Nkiru, and Obiageli, had taught her well. They shared tricks, covered for each other, and laughed at how easy it was to deceive their husbands. Men are blind, Nkiru once said. As long as food is on the table and they are satisfied at night, they ask no questions. Adaeze agreed. She had convinced herself that secrecy equaled safety. That what her husband did not know could not hurt him. But she was not dealing with human rules. She was breaking spiritual laws, ancient laws that did not require a witness to bring judgment. Every affair, every lie, every broken vow was being recorded. Not in books or by gossip, but in the realm where consequences are measured in sickness, madness, and death. And the debt she was building would soon come due. Not just for her, but for everyone connected to her disobedience. One morning, Chukwudi woke up and could not stand. His legs refused to obey him. Adaeze called for help, and neighbors carried him to the clinic. The doctors examined him, ran more tests, and shook their heads in frustration. We cannot find the cause, they admitted. This is beyond our understanding. Chukwudi lay in that hospital bed for 2 weeks, growing weaker each day. His brothers came to visit. His mother wept at his bedside. The entire community prayed for him. But nothing changed. One night, as Adaeze sat beside him pretending to be the concerned wife, Chukwudi opened his eyes and looked at her with a clarity that made her shiver. "I am leaving," he said softly. "What do you mean?" Adaeze asked, her voice shaking. "I am going back to my father's village. I cannot stay here anymore." Within days, Chukwudi's brothers arranged for him to be moved. They carried him out of Onitsha quietly, without ceremony, without anger. He did not accuse Adaeze publicly. He did not shame her before the community. He simply left. And the moment his feet crossed the boundary into his ancestral village, something shifted. The tightness in his chest eased. His breathing became lighter. The elders in his father's village knew what to do. They performed cleansing rituals, burned protective herbs, and prayed to the ancestors. Slowly, Chukwudi began to heal. But back in Onitsha, Adaeze stood in her empty house and felt, for the first time, truly alone. The night Chukwudi left, Adaeze called her friends. "He's gone," she said, her voice trembling between fear and relief. Ifeoma laughed. "Good. Now you are free." Nkiru added, "No more pretending. No more sneaking. You can do whatever you want now." Obiageli brought palm wine, and the 4 women sat together in Adaeze's parlor, celebrating what they called her liberation. They drank. They laughed. They mocked Chukwudi for being weak. "He ran away like a coward," Ifeoma said. "Let him stay in his village. You are better off without him." Adaeze wanted to believe them. She wanted to feel the freedom they described. But deep inside, something felt wrong. The house felt colder. The silence felt heavier. Still, she pushed the feeling aside and raised her cup. "To freedom," she declared. Her friends echoed, "To freedom." They drank until the moon was high. Then, one by one, they stumbled home. Adaeze locked her door and climbed into bed, her head spinning from the wine. But just as sleep began to take her, a sharp pain shot through her right hip. She gasped, clutching the area, her eyes wide in the darkness. The pain was sudden, hot, and piercing, like something had bitten her from the inside. She tried to move, but her hip locked. She tried to stand, but her leg refused. Adaeze lay there, breathing hard, sweat pouring down her face. And for the first time in years, she felt genuine fear. The pain did not leave. When Adaeze woke the next morning, it was still there, throbbing deep in her hip joint. She limped to the kitchen, gripping the walls for support. Every step sent sharp jolts through her body. At first, she thought it would pass. Maybe she had slept in a bad position. Maybe she had twisted something without realizing. But as the days went on, the pain grew worse. It spread from her hip down her leg, making it nearly impossible to walk. She could no longer carry water from the well. She could no longer go to the market. Even sitting became unbearable. The pain moved. Some mornings it was in her hip. Other days it traveled to her lower back, or her knee, or her ankle. It had no pattern, no logic. It simply wandered through her body like a living thing, biting wherever it pleased. Adaeze tried everything. She rubbed hot oil on the area. She tied cloth soaked in herbs around her waist. She drank bitter concoctions recommended by neighbors. Nothing worked. The pain stayed, relentless and cruel. And worse, it began to change her. The beautiful, confident woman who once walked through Onitsha with her head high now shuffled like an old woman, bent over, face twisted in agony. People who used to envy her now pitied her. And pity, Adaeze quickly learned, was far worse than envy. Adaeze finally went to the hospital. The doctor examined her carefully, pressing on her hip, moving her leg in different directions. "Does this hurt?" he asked. "Yes," she gasped. "And this?" "Yes." He ran X-rays. He checked for fractures, infections, and inflammation. But every test came back normal. "There is nothing physically wrong with your hip," the doctor said, clearly frustrated. "Maybe it's stress. Maybe you need to rest more." Adaeze left the hospital with painkillers that did nothing. She visited a second hospital. Then a third. Every doctor said the same thing. "We cannot find the cause." One doctor, an older man with tired eyes, finally leaned forward and spoke carefully. "Madam, sometimes sickness does not come from the body. Sometimes it comes from other places. Have you considered seeing someone who deals with spiritual matters?" Adaeze's heart sank. She knew what he meant. He was telling her to see a herbalist, a diviner, someone who could look beyond the physical. But she was afraid. Afraid of what they might say. Afraid of what they might see. Still, the pain left her no choice. She could not live like this. She could not walk, could not work, could not even sleep without waking up screaming. So finally, desperate and broken, Adaeze began to search for help in places she had once mocked. Places where the old woman went. Places where truth was spoken without mercy. While Adaeze suffered, something strange began to happen to her friends. Ifeoma, the boldest of them all, started complaining of headaches. At first, they were mild, just small pains behind her eyes. But within weeks, the headaches became unbearable. She would scream in the middle of the night, clutching her head, begging for relief. Her husband took her to the hospital. The doctors found nothing. Then one morning, Ifeoma collapsed in her kitchen. By the time her husband found her, she was unconscious, foam leaking from the corner of her mouth. They rushed her to the hospital, but she never woke up. 3 days later, Ifeoma was dead. The entire community was shocked. She had been healthy, young, and strong. How could she just die? Adaeze heard the news and felt ice run through her veins. She wanted to attend the funeral, but her hip pain kept her trapped at home. She could barely walk to her own gate. Nkiru and Obiageli came to visit her after the burial. They sat in silence, the weight of Ifeoma's death pressing down on them like a heavy stone. "What is happening to us?" Nkiru whispered. Obiageli shook her head, fear clear in her eyes. "I don't know. But I don't feel well either." Adaeze looked at both of them, and for the first time, she saw the truth clearly. They were all dying. Slowly. Painfully. And no hospital could save them. 2 months after Ifeoma's death, Obiageli fell ill. It started with stomach pains, sharp and sudden, doubling her over in agony. She went to the hospital, and the doctors ran tests. They found nothing. The pain continued. Then came the vomiting. Then the fever. Then the weakness. Obiageli's husband spent all his savings taking her from one hospital to another. Specialist after specialist examined her. No one could explain what was wrong. Within 3 months, Obiageli was dead. The second funeral was quieter than the first. People were beginning to whisper. 2 married women, both friends, both dying mysteriously within months of each other. The elders began to talk. The older women who knew the old ways shook their heads knowingly. This is not sickness, they said quietly. This is judgment. Nkiru, the last of Adeze's close friends, heard the whispers and panicked. She knew she was next. She could feel it. A strange heaviness had settled over her body, like something was watching her, waiting. She stopped going out. She stopped talking to people. She locked herself in her house, terrified. But fear could not save her. 1 week after Obiageli's burial, Nkiru started coughing blood. Her husband rushed her to the hospital, but it was too late. Whatever was killing them had already made its choice. Nkiru died 5 days later. 3 women. 3 funerals. 3 families destroyed. And Adaeze, lying on her mat, unable to walk, knew she was supposed to be the 4th. After Nkiru's death, the remaining women who had been part of their circle vanished. They stopped visiting Adaeze. They stopped calling. They avoided her completely. When Adaeze managed to drag herself to the market one day, women she had known for years turned their backs. Mothers pulled their daughters away when she limped past. Even the traders refused to sell to her. We don't want trouble, one woman said bluntly. Whatever is following you, we want no part of it. Adaeze stood there, humiliated, her hips screaming in pain, tears streaming down her face. She had become untouchable. A living warning. She returned home alone, crawling part of the way because her leg gave out. Her house, once filled with laughter and visitors, was now silent and empty. No one came. No one cared. Even her own family members made excuses not to visit. They feared that whatever curse had taken her friends might spread to them. Adaeze lay on her mat that night, staring at the ceiling, her body broken, her spirit crushed. She thought about her husband, Chukwudi, who had loved her and trusted her. She thought about the warnings from the elders that she had mocked. She thought about her 3 dead friends. And finally, for the first time in years, Adaeze allowed herself to admit the truth. She had brought this on herself. And no one was coming to save her. Adaeze made a decision. She would return to her father's village, the place where she was born, where the old ways were still respected. She sent word to her younger brother, and he came reluctantly to fetch her. He did not speak much during the journey. His face was tight with shame. When they arrived at the family compound, her elderly father looked at her with sorrow but no surprise. I heard what happened, he said quietly. Go to Mama Neoma. She is the only one who can help you now. Mama Neoma was the village herbalist, a woman so old no one remembered her exact age. She lived alone at the edge of the forest, in a small hut surrounded by clay pots and drying herbs. People came to her when hospitals failed. When doctors gave up. When the problem was not of this world. Adaze's brother carried her to Mama Neoma's hut and set her down gently outside. Then he left without a word. Adaeze sat there, waiting, her body trembling from pain and fear. After a long silence, the old woman emerged. She was small, her back slightly bent, her eyes sharp and knowing. She looked at Adaeze for a long time without speaking. Then she said, "You have been running from the truth. But the truth has been chasing you. And now it has caught you." Mama Neoma gestured for Adaeze to come inside. "Come. It is time to face what you have done." Inside the hut, the air was thick with the smell of herbs and burning incense. Mama Neoma sat on a low stool and motioned for Adaeze to sit across from her. The old woman reached into a worn leather pouch and pulled out a handful of cowrie shells. She cast them onto a woven mat between them and studied the pattern they made. After a long silence, Mama Neoma spoke. "You were married to a good man. A man who loved you. A man who provided for you. But you gave your body to other men. Many men." Adaeze's breath caught. She had not told the old woman anything. "You thought because your husband did not see, it did not matter. You thought because your friends were doing the same, you were safe. But marriage is not a game. It is a covenant. A spiritual bond. When you break it, you do not just offend your husband. You offend the ancestors who blessed that union. You offend the gods who witnessed your vows." Mama Neoma's voice was calm but heavy with authority. "Your husband became sick because his spirit was being drained. Every time you lay with another man, you broke the protective covering over your home. You opened doors that should have stayed closed. Sickness walked in. Weakness walked in. And now, death is walking behind you." Adaeze wept, her whole body shaking. "Please, Mama. I am sorry. I did not know. I did not understand." The old woman shook her head. "You knew. The elders warned you. Tradition warned you. You simply chose not to listen." Mama Neoma continued, her voice steady and unshakable. "There is a law in marriage. A spiritual law. When a woman is joined to a man, her body is no longer hers alone. It belongs to the covenant. When she gives that body to another man, she commits theft. She steals from her husband. She steals from the ancestors. And theft, in the spirit realm, demands repayment." Adaeze listened, her tears falling silently. "Your 3 friends are dead because they broke the same law. You are still alive, but barely. The only reason you are breathing is because your husband forgave you. His mercy bought you time. But forgiveness does not erase consequence. It only delays judgment." The old woman leaned forward, her gaze piercing. "Your pain is not a sickness. It is a message. Your body is being held accountable for what your spirit allowed. Every man you lay with left a mark. And now those marks are burning you from the inside." Adaeze sobbed. "What can I do? How can I be free?" Mama Neoma was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "You must face your husband. You must confess everything before the elders. You must return what was given to you in marriage. Only then will the ancestors release you." Adaeze's heart sank. "But Chukwudi is far away. He may not even want to see me." "He will come," Mama Neoma said simply. "Because he is a man of honor. And honor answers when it is called." The old woman stood. "I will send word. You will wait here." Word was sent to Chukwudi's village. Days passed in silence. Adaeze stayed in her father's compound, barely able to move, the pain in her hip a constant reminder of everything she had lost. Then, on the 7th day, a message came back. Chukwudi agreed to come. When he arrived, Adaeze almost did not recognize him. He had gained weight. His skin glowed with health. His eyes were clear and strong. The sickness that had nearly killed him was completely gone. He stood before her, whole and restored, while she sat broken and bent. Chukwudi did not speak at first. He simply looked at her, his face unreadable. Then he said quietly, "I heard you were dying." Adaeze nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I deserve it." Chukwudi exhaled slowly. "Perhaps. But I did not come here to watch you die. I came because Mama Neoma said you needed to be released. And for that to happen, I must be the one to release you." He sat down across from her, the distance between them heavy with years of betrayal and pain. "When I left Onitsha," Chukwudi said, "I was dying. My body was shutting down. The elders in my village knew what was happening. They told me that my sickness was not mine. It was tied to you. To what you were doing. When I left you, the sickness left me." Adaeze wept harder. "I am so sorry. I destroyed everything." Chukwudi nodded. "Yes. You did. But I forgave you once. And I will forgive you again. Not because you deserve it. But because I choose peace over bitterness." The elders of Adaeze's village were summoned. They gathered under the big tree in the center of the compound, their faces stern and watchful. Adaeze was carried to the meeting on a mat because she could no longer walk. Her father sat beside her, his head bowed in shame. Chukwudi stood before the elders, calm and dignified. The head elder, Papa Adaeze, spoke first. "We have heard the story. We know what has happened. But we must hear it from her mouth. Let her speak." All eyes turned to Adaeze. She trembled, her voice barely a whisper. I broke my marriage. I was unfaithful to my husband. Not once. Many times. I lied. I hid. I sinned. And now I am paying for it." The elders murmured among themselves. Papa Adaeze raised his hand for silence. "You were warned," he said. "Our mothers warned you. Our fathers warned you. But you chose to follow your own desires. Now 3 of your friends are dead. And you are here, broken, begging for mercy." Adaeze nodded, unable to speak. Papa Adaeze turned to Chukwudi. "And you, the husband. What do you say?" Chukwudi stood tall. "I say I forgive her. But I also say that our marriage is over. I cannot take her back. Too much has been broken. However, I will not leave her to die without honor. I will do what is required so she can be free." The elders nodded slowly. They understood. Forgiveness had been given. But justice still had to be served. Papa Adaeze spoke to Chukwudi. "According to our custom, when a marriage ends because of a woman's unfaithfulness, the bride price must be returned. This is the law. It is how the spiritual bond is properly broken. Only then can both parties be fully released." Chukwudi nodded. "I know." He turned to Adaeze's father. "I ask for the return of the bride price I paid when I married your daughter." Adaeze's father winced. The bride price had been spent long ago. But he knew this had to be done. "I will pay it," he said quietly. "It will take time, but I will gather it." The elders agreed. "You have 1 full moon to return what was paid. When it is returned, the marriage will be dissolved. The covenant will be broken. And the ancestors will release their hold." Adaeze wept, not from sadness, but from a strange mixture of relief and regret. She had wanted freedom once, freedom to do as she pleased. Now she was being given freedom of a different kind. Freedom from the consequences of her sin. But it came at a cost. Her marriage was over. Her reputation was destroyed. Her body was broken. And 3 of her friends were dead. Papa Adaeze looked at her one last time. "You will live," he said. "But you will carry the memory of this for the rest of your days. Let it be a lesson. Not just for you, but for every woman who hears your story. It took 3 weeks for Adaeze's father to gather the bride price. He sold land. He borrowed from relatives. He emptied what little savings he had left. Finally, the day came. The elders gathered again. Chukwudi stood before them, and Adaeze's father presented the bride price, a collection of money, yams, palm wine, and cloth, exactly as it had been paid years before. Chukwudi accepted it without counting. "It is done," he said. Papa is raised his staff. The covenant is broken. The marriage is ended. Let the ancestors bear witness. At that exact moment, something shifted. Adaeze, who had been sitting in pain for months, felt a sudden release. The tightness in her hip eased. The burning sensation faded. For the first time in what felt like forever, she could move her leg without screaming. She gasped, tears streaming down her face. "It's gone. The pain is gone." The elders nodded knowingly. "The law has been satisfied. You are released." Chukwudi turned to leave, but before he walked away, he looked at Adaeze one last time. "I hope you find peace," he said quietly. Then he walked out of the compound and out of her life forever. Adaeze watched him go, her heart breaking in a way that had nothing to do with physical pain. She had lost everything. But at least, finally, she was free. Free from the pain. Free from the lies. Free from the weight of her sin. But the cost had been greater than she ever imagined. Adaeze stayed in her father's village. She did not return to Onitsha. She could not bear to face the place where her life had unraveled. Slowly, her body healed. The pain left completely. She could walk again, though with a slight limp that would never fully go away. Her father built her a small hut at the edge of the compound. She lived there quietly, helping with small chores, avoiding attention. The women in the village knew her story. Some pitied her. Others avoided her, fearing the shadow of her past. But no one mocked her. They understood that she had survived something many did not. She had been given a second chance. Adaeze spent her days in silence, thinking about the choices she had made. She thought about Chukwudi, the man who had loved her and forgiven her even when he had every right to destroy her. She thought about Ifeoma, Nkiru, and Obiageli, her friends who had laughed with her, sinned with her, and died because of it. She thought about the elders' warnings, the ones she had ignored because she believed she was smarter than tradition. And she understood, finally, that some laws are not made by men. Some laws are written in the fabric of existence itself. And when you break them, the consequences are not negotiable. Adaeze never married again. She never sought another man. She lived the rest of her life as a warning, a living testimony of what happens when desire overpowers discipline. And her story spread far beyond her village. Years later, mothers would tell their daughters Adaeze's story. They would gather them under the moonlight and speak in low, serious voices. "There was once a woman," they would begin, "who had everything. A good husband. A comfortable life. Respect. But she threw it all away because she wanted more than what was hers." The daughters would listen, wide-eyed. What happened to her, they would ask. And the mothers would answer, she lost everything. Her friends died. Her body was crippled. Her husband left. And she spent the rest of her life alone, paying for choices she made in secret. Then the mothers would lean closer and say the words that every generation needed to hear. "This is why you should never sleep around as a married woman. Because marriage is not just a piece of paper. It is a covenant. It is protected by laws older than any of us. Laws that do not need a courtroom. Laws that do not need witnesses. The ancestors are always watching. The spirits are always listening. And when the law is broken, justice will come. Not loudly. Not immediately. But it will come. Adaeze lived to be an old woman. And when she finally died, her story did not die with her. It lived on, passed down from mother to daughter, from elder to youth, a reminder that some boundaries exist for a reason. Tradition warned them. 2 died. 1 survived to tell the story.